Hey everybody, News Now Wyoming here. Going to do things a little bit differently. We're not going to talk about current lawsuits or old lawsuits. Today we're going to talk about politics for a minute here. Dirty word. Normally I wouldn't do this. Okay, I really truly wouldn't. I don't know why I am this time. But the House kind of pissed me off when I found out about this. We're going to be, and this was actually filed over a month ago on January 4th, 2021. Today we are going to be discussing House Resolution 127 and what it does. So let's just get right into it. Alright, so House Resolution 122 to provide for the licensing of firearm and ammunition possession and the registration of firearms and to prohibit the possession of certain ammunition. I don't know why I can't highlight today, or this document. This is only 19 pages, so we'll probably end up reading it in its entirety, maybe skipping some parts, I don't know. Ms. Jackson Lee introduced the following bill, which was referred to the Committee on the Judiciary. And that's all it's been. It's been introduced, no committee's taken action on it. Yeah, okay. We'll talk about what I think chances of it passing are at the end of the video, so stick around. A bill to provide for the licensing of firearm be enacted by the Senate and House, that blah blah blah. I'm assuming a victim of some sort. Licensing and Registration Act. So we'll skip this. The Attorney General, through the ATF, shall establish a system for licensing the possession of firearms or ammunition in the United States and for the registration with the Bureau of each firearm present in the United States. Under the firearm registration system, the owner of a firearm shall transmit to the Bureau the make, model, and serial number of the firearm, the identity of the owner of the firearm, the date the firearm was acquired by the owner, and where the firearm is or will be stored. So yes, you have to register your weapon across the states, and you have to know all this stuff, the date the firearm was acquired. So let's pretend for a second. I had purchased a gun on July 1st. That's the fact. But I wrote on the form August 1st because I can't remember. Especially when we talk about guns that you've had for 20 years. What day did you purchase that? Are you now in perjury for lying on a federal document? Is that a federal crime to lie on this federal document? Can you be prosecuted because you put the wrong date on it? A notice specifying the identity of any person to whom and any period of time during which the firearm will be loaned to the person. So if you're going to let a friend borrow your gun, you need to let the federal government know. Deadline for supplying information. In the case of a firearm acquired before the effective date of the section, within 3 months after the effective date of the section. In the case of a firearm acquired on or after the effective date, on the date the owner acquires the firearm. Database. The Attorney General shall establish and maintain a database of all firearms registered pursuant to this subsection. Access. The Attorney General shall make the contents of the database accessible to all members of the public, all federal, state, and local law enforcement authorities, all branches of the United States Armed Forces, and all state and local governments as defined by the Bureau. So, let's get this straight. You're going to be telling them where your firearm is stored and the address of this firearm. And then you are going to be posting it on a public website that anybody in the entire world, including those with criminal intent, maybe? Okay. You're going to be telling them where your gun is. The entire public at large will have access to this database. The stupidity that comes out of our Congress on a daily basis this just blows my mind. I'm a criminal and I want to figure out where a gun is. Oh, where can I find out where a gun is at? So I'm going to first look at this database. And I'm going to look anybody in the area. Then I'm going to Google Maps that house. Ooh, no, that doesn't look like a good one. Ooh, no, that does. Oh, that one's a good one. Then I'm going to figure out by just sitting outside down the street. I'm going to hang out and I'm going to be watching that house. When are people home? When would I be safest to go in there? Or when do they sleep? They said that it's in their closet. If it's not in a safe, yeah, again, I want you to just picture the stupidity of making this available. Not just the database itself. We'll get into that. But of making it public so anybody can see it. That's what we're talking about here. Licensing system requirements. Except as otherwise provided in the subsection, the Attorney General shall issue to an individual a license to possess a firearm and ammunition if the individual has attained 21 years of age, after applying for the license, undergoes a criminal background check conducted by the National Instant Criminal Background Check System established under that, and this check does not indicate that a possession of a firearm by the individual would violate subsection G or 922 or state law, undergoes a psychological evaluation conducted in accordance with. So, you want the gun, you have to go through this background check. Then you also have to undergo a psychological evaluation, and that has to come out positive for you. Okay? Successfully completes this training course certified by the Attorney General in the use, safety, and storage of firearms that includes at least 24 hours of training. At least 24 hours of So, our military, okay, I served 10 years in the Air Force. When I first went in to the military, and we did our M16 training, during basic training. As an enlisted person, that's what I did. Out of a 6-week course, 4 hours was dedicated to M16 training. For me to be able to fire a gun on the enemy of the United States required 4 hours of training. However, to carry a gun, or to even own a gun, to buy ammunition for a gun, requires at least 24 hours of training. During my 10 years in the Air Force, I used the M16 or equivalent I did that training 4 times, and each time was about 4 hours long. That's 16 hours over 10 years. I also did a 9mm course back in 2002. And that was also 4 hours. So over a 10-year period in the military where I could fire on the enemy of our country, I accumulated 20 hours of training. And I was considered legal and safe to use those weapons, to fire those weapons in time of battle. However, I can't keep a gun in my house for my own protection without 24 hours of training that is certified and okay, 24 hours of training. Okay, demonstrates that on issuance of the license, the individual will have in effect an insurance policy issued under subsection D. So I have to carry insurance just in case I shoot somebody. Antique firearm display license. So I don't have any antique guns in my house. I don't. I'm not a big antique guy. I've moved too many times over the last 10 years. I don't keep antiques. I don't keep anything nice around. So this really wouldn't apply to me too much, but I still care about it because any infringement of my rights is bad. The Attorney General shall issue to an individual a license to display an antique firearm in a residence if the individual is the holder of a license issued under subparagraph A. So you already have to display an antique firearm. Let's say you've got a old Minuteman rifle. Okay, they're really cool. I mean, let's face it, they are cool, awesome guns, and you want it on your wall. It hasn't fired in over 100 years. You have to have been approved above. Okay, so you have to go through 24 hours of training and the rest of that crap. And then you have to supply proof that you own an antique firearm, describing the manner in which the firearm will be displayed in accordance with regulations prescribed by the Attorney General, and certifies that the firearm will be so displayed, and this demonstrates that the individual has provided for storage of the firearm in a safe or facility approved by the Attorney General for the storage of firearms. So I can't just have it hanging on my wall. I've got to have it in a display safe. Something, I'm assuming, with plexiglass that you can't break. This is a gun that hasn't fired in over 100 years. Okay. Military style weapons like, what did I do? Military style weapons license. The Attorney General shall issue to an individual a license to own and possess a military style weapon if the individual is a holder of the license issued above. Okay, so to have a military style weapon. Do they define military style weapon? What is a military style weapon? We'll see if they go into definitions here in this. Okay, after applying for a license under this subparagraph, successfully completes a training course certified by the AG in the use, safety, and storage of the weapon. That includes at least 24 hours of training and live fire training. So you have to go through a training course specifically for your weapon. That is approved by the Attorney General. Psychological evaluation. Here we go. A psychological evaluation is conducted in accordance with this paragraph if the evaluation is conducted in compliance with such standards as shall be established by the Attorney General. So the Attorney General gets to say this is what it means to be mental. The evaluation is conducted by a licensed psychologist approved by the Attorney General. So what grants that approval? What is the requirements for this approval? I get the license part, but when can they be disapproved by the Attorney General? Again, I understand the need to have a licensed psychologist do this. Okay, that's stupid, I don't agree. But I understand that. However, does the psychologist have to completely agree with every single thing that the President or the Attorney General says? And if they don't, they are no longer approved? Do they have to go through their own psychological evaluation to make sure that they don't have any tendencies, right-leaning tendencies? Is that, what's the approval method? What's the denial method? As deemed necessary by the licensed psychologist involved, the evaluation included a psychological evaluation of other members of the household in which the individual resides. So you're going to call my mommy and daddy if I live with them. I don't. I live with my daughter. Or she lives with me. I mean, she's a teenager. So you're going to call and talk to my daughter? As part of the psychological evaluation, the licensed psychologist interviewed any spouse of the individual, any former spouse of the individual. Ooh, any former spouse. My ex-wife is in England. My ex-wife tore me apart in court with a lot of lies that were proven to be lies. Falsities. I was not able to call them lies in court. The judge said that they may have been risen to the level of a falsity, but that is not a lie. So, she did not lie about me in court. But she said falsities against me in court. Why would a psychologist need to talk to a woman that despises everything about me, that lost a case where I was allowed to take my daughter 8,000 miles away from her? Why exactly would a psychologist need to talk to her? And would she really say anything positive about me to the psychologist, knowing that it might hurt my chances of doing something I enjoy doing? Seriously? Are you stupid? And I'm not the only one. How many ex-wives? Raise your hand if you've got an ex-wife. Okay, raise your hand. Yep, you too. Okay, you too. Raise your hand. How many of your ex-wives are going to say positive things about you when given the opportunity to trash talk you? And at least 2 other persons who are a member of the family of or an associate of the individual to further determine the state of the mental, emotional, and relational stability of the individual in relation to firearms. Okay, let's also go back to this. My ex-wife is British. The British are extremely anti-gun. They aren't allowed to own pistols. Rifles are extremely difficult to own there. So in their eyes, in the government's eyes there, should I own a gun? Hell no. In my ex-wife's eyes, should I own a gun? We've been divorced over 10 years. Actually, 13 years now that I look at the date. Okay. Alright, denial of license. The Attorney General shall deny a license to an individual if the individual is prohibited by federal law from possessing a firearm. Okay. The individual has been hospitalized with a mental illness, disturbance, or diagnosis, including depression, homicidal ideation, suicidal ideation, attempted suicide, or addiction to a controlled substance, or a brain disease. So, if you were 15 years old and you threatened to commit suicide, and you are now 50 years old and you wish to own a gun, guess what? You cannot own a gun. Okay? No, there is no exceptions to this. I don't read any. Yeah, I don't read any exceptions to this. So if you've ever had these things, even as a teenager, you cannot own a gun. Doesn't matter if it was 40 years ago. Now I know plenty of teenagers growing up who said that they wanted to commit suicide. Could have been for 1,000 reasons. Okay, attention seeking, they were depressed. I mean, there's 1,000 reasons why somebody would do that. But then they got better. That they would be barred from owning a gun or buying ammunition on account of conduct that endangers self or others. Conduct that endangers self or others. That is such a overly broad statement. On account of conduct that endangers self or others. So if you've ever driven drunk, does that endanger self or others? So if you've ever had a DUI, you wouldn't qualify? Even though it's a misdemeanor? or reckless driving ticket. Would a reckless driving ticket qualify you under this paragraph? Again, this is so overly broad. Authorized. The Attorney General may deny such a license to an individual if the psychological evaluation indicates that the individual has a chronic mental illness or disturbance or brain disease, is addicted to a controlled substance within the meaning of Controlled Substance Act, or alcohol. So if the psychologist thinks you are addicted to alcohol, you cannot ever again own a gun. Now what about somebody? I know a lot of addicts. Alcoholism runs in my family. I don't have actual liquor in front of me right now, otherwise I'd take a drink. While saying that, alcoholism runs in my family. Those who have gone through the program and are clean now, they'll tell you, even though they haven't drank for 20 years, they are still an alcoholic. That urge to drink is there every day of their life. But the willpower that they show walking away from it is amazing. So you are always an alcoholic. You are always addicted to alcohol if you face that in the past. Whether or not you drink, you are always addicted to alcohol. And same thing with narcotics. So 20 years after your last drink, you can't own a gun because you sought treatment, or not even sought treatment. If you went and had a drink, and if one of those addicts, alcoholics, say, are questioned by a psychologist, are you an alcoholic? Yes. When was your last drink? 20 years ago. But that's an honest answer. Again, that is a truly honest answer. Yes, I am still an alcoholic. Yes, I still want to drink every single day. But they're not drinking now, and they haven't for 20 years. So why should that ever bar somebody from owning a gun? Or has attempted to commit suicide, or prior psychological treatment or evaluation of the individual indicated the individual engaged in conduct that posed a danger to self or others. Suspension of license. A license issued under this subsection to an individual who is under indictment for a criminal crime punishable by imprisonment for a term exceeding 1 year is hereby suspended. So you lose your rights or your license until you're found innocent. Now, the auditing community gets arrested a lot. The charges are 99% of the time dropped for being frivolous, but they don't get dropped the next day. So if the charge for obstruction of a police officer, even though it's not a valid charge that they are being held for, carries a 1-year sentence. It does. It carries a 1-year sentence. So they're in Texas. So if you are charged with that, until the case is dismissed against you for being frivolous, you now have to give up your guns. Authorized for lack of insurance, lack of firearm insurance, may suspend a license issued under the subsection to an individual who has violated that in the most recent 12-month period. So if you don't carry the proper insurance, you lose your license. Revocation of license. A license issued under the subsection to an individual who is or becomes prohibited by federal or state law from possessing a firearm is hereby revoked. Such an individual shall immediately return the license and surrender all firearms and ammunition owned and possessed by the individual to the Attorney General, not to somebody that has a license. No. There is no transfer of guns allowed, even to an authorized person. We, the government, get your guns. We, the government, get all your ammunition. Expiration of license. The license issued to an individual under this section shall expire in the case of a license that has been in effect for less than 5 years, 1 year after issuance or renewal, as the case may be. Or so every year, or in the case that has of a license that has been in effect for at least 5 years, 3 years after the most recent date. So for your first 5 years of having this license, you have to go through all these steps every year. Now, to drive a car here in Wyoming now has been changed to every 5 years instead of every 4 years. Up until this past year, it was every 4 years. Okay. So you have to get a psychological evaluation every year, at your expense, of course. Do you have to get the training every year? The training really didn't say. Renewal of license. The Attorney General shall renew a license if the individual requests by the end of the 60-day period, and in the 3-year period ending with the date the renewal is requested, has met the requirements of all those paragraphs above, and has successfully completed a training course certified by the Attorney General in the use, safety, and storage of firearms, and includes at least 8 hours of training. So again, so this answers that training question I just asked a second ago. I just received 24 hours of training last year. Now I need to receive another 8 hours of training this year in order to maintain my license. And then every year after that for the first 5 years. Again, 10 years in the Air Force, deployed, actual on deployment 3 times, on multiple TDYs to areas that were places where I was issued a weapon. I had less than 20 hours of training total where I could fire on somebody and not blink an eye about it. Never did. Okay, never did. I was never put in anywhere near that situation, but I was allowed to with 20 hours of training over 10 years. Meets the requirement of paragraphs 1A3 and D in the case of a license issued under paragraph 1C in the 2-year period ending with the date of the renewal is requested and has successfully completed a training course. Firearm insurance. The Attorney General shall issue to any person who has applied for a license and has paid to the Attorney General the fee specified in paragraph 2 of this subsection a policy that insures the person against liability for losses and damages resulting from the use of any firearm by the person during the 1-year period that begins with the date the policy is issued. $800 for the year. Does that handle? So the Second Amendment attorneys or insurance, where they'll actually bring in lawyers to assist you, is what, $500 a year or something like that? Last time I looked at it, $800. Military style. Okay, yep. Military style weapon defined. The term military style weapon means any of the firearms or copies or duplicates of the firearm in any caliber known as Marinko, Mitchell, and Poly Technologies, all models, Action Arms, Israeli Military Industrial, Uzi and Ghillie, Beretta. So they're specifying with specificity exactly what is. A Colt AR-15. Wow, really? M11, M12, Tech 9, DC 9, and Tech 22, revolving cylindrical shotguns such as to the Sweet Sweeper and Striker 12, a semi-automatic rifle that has an ability to accept a detachable magazine and has at least 2 of a folding or telescoping stock, a pistol grip that protrudes conspicuously beneath the action of the weapon, a bayonet mount, a flash suppressor or threaded barrel designed to accommodate a flash suppressor. Okay. A grenade launcher. Semi-automatic pistol that has an ability to accept a detachable magazine and has at least two of an ammunition magazine that attaches to the pistol outside of the pistol grip. A threaded barrel capable of... Okay. No. A semi-automatic that has at least two of those. Pistol grip. Fixed magazine capacity in excess of 5 rounds. Clerical amendment. Table of sections for such chapter is amended by adding at the following. Deadline for establishment. Within 1 year after the date of the enactment of this act, the Attorney General shall prescribe final regulations to implement the amendments made by the subsection. Prohibition penalties. Let's talk about penalties. Prohibitions first. 922 of such title is amended. It shall be unlawful for a person to possess firearm unless the person is carrying a valid license under 932C1. So my concealed carry permit that I have issued to me from Wyoming does not count for crap at all here. Okay. 2A, in the case of a firearm owned by the person, the firearm is registered to the person under that. Or in the case of a firearm owned by another person, the firearm is so registered to such other person, and such other person has notified the AG that the firearm has been loaned to the person and the possession is during the loan period specified in the notice. Yes. You must carry your permission slip with you wherever you go. It shall be unlawful for a person to transfer a firearm or ammunition to a person who is not licensed under section 932C1. It shall be unlawful for a person to sell or give a firearm or ammunition to another person unless the person has notified the AG of the sale or gift. It shall be unlawful for a person to loan a firearm to another person unless the person has notified the AG of the loan, including the identity of such other person and the period for which the loan is made. It should be unlawful for a person holding a valid license to transfer a firearm to an individual who has not attained 18 years of age. What does it mean to transfer a firearm? My daughter is 15 years old. We go to the gun range a lot. She's probably fired more ammunition than any of these stupid Democrats in the Congress have in their entire life. She's been going to the range since the range itself since she was 9, and she shot her first gun when she was 7. That's when we brought her back here to the U.S. after the court stuff. So she's been shooting for 8 years of her 15 at a range for quite a bit of that time. And no, I don't make it there every week like I used to since COVID, because I can't find 9mm ammo. Coincidentally, if you know where I can find some, let me know in the comments below. Now she normally shoots the 38. She's got a revolver. It's pink. It's called the Pink Lady. It's my gun for legal purposes. But she shoots it. So she shoots it at the range. Did I transfer it to them? Transfer it to her? And am I in violation of this law? Is she even allowed to shoot a gun anymore, according to this law? Person who possesses a firearm or to whom a license is issued under Section 932C1 shall have, in effect, an insurance policy under Section 932D. Penalties. Whoever knowingly violates 922AA shall be fined not less than $75,000 and not more than $150,000. $75,000 for possessing a gun you didn't register. $150,000. In prison not less than 15 years and not more than 25 years, or both. Molesting a child in the federal courts starts at 1 year. for molesting a 9-year-old child starts at 1 year in prison and a fine of $1,000. Yet owning a gun that you did not properly register or carry insurance for, and you didn't turn it into the proper authorities, brings you a punishment of $75,000 and 15 years minimum. Whoever knowingly violates BB1 is to transfer. Okay, so to give it to somebody that's not licensed, shall be fined not less than $50,000, not more than $75,000, and imprisoned not less than 10 years and not more than 15 years. Okay, so my neighbor down the street, I know he had a license last year. He tells me, "Yep, I'm good. I just renewed it, and so I sell my gun." And they again knowingly violates. It's hard to prove that you knew it, so that would be a hard one to prove. Truly, it would. B2. What's B2? It shall be unlawful for a person to sell or give to another person unless the person has notified. Oh, okay, so if you sell it to somebody who is licensed, but you don't notify the AG that you gave somebody else your ammunition, shall be fined not less than $30,000 and not more than $50,000. Imprisoned not less than 5 years and not more than 10 years, or both. Whoever knowingly violates 9BB3, you know what? Screw this. $5,000 or not more than $10,000. So no jail time for what carries no jail time? To loan a firearm. Oh, so I can get fined $5,000 for loaning my gun to somebody without telling the Attorney General. My friend wants to take it down to the range. Again, define loan. What is a loan? He takes it to the range for the day? That's a loan? What about if we're both at the range and he shoots it? Is that a loan? Could the argument be made that it is a loan? I can see the argument being made by an ambitious attorney. We're going to. Eliminations of prohibition of establishment of centralized firearm registration system. Striking title is amended by striking the second sentence. Prohibition on possession of certain ammunition. Shall be unlawful for any person to possess ammunition that is 50 caliber or greater. Shall be unlawful for any person to possess a large capacity ammunition feeding device. It shall not apply to the manufacture for or possession by the United States or Department of or agency of the United States or political subdivision by a law enforcement officer employed by such an entity for purposes of law enforcement. So don't worry, you guys. The government is there to protect you. You can't own a large capacity magazine, but they still can. And so if you already own a large capacity ammunition feeding device, magazine, you're in violation of this law. Unless it talks about grandfathers, which, come on, read the rest of it. Does it? No, it won't. Possession by an employee or contractor of a licensee. So these are still the exceptions. Licensed manufacturer, importer for the purposes of testing, authorized by the Attorney General, an organization that provides firearm training that is registered with the AG. Large capacity device defined. As amended by Section 1 of this Act, the term large capacity ammunition feeding device means a magazine, belt, drum, feed strip, or similar device that has a capacity of or that can be readily restored or converted to accept more than 10 rounds of ammunition, but does not include an attached tubular device. Whew! Go big or go home. Alright? You're allowed 10 ammunition in your magazine, and that's it. 10. 1-0. Your fingers or your toes. Unless you've had an accident with a gun and then you've lost one of your toes. Then don't use your toes. Okay, so, and this carries its own penalties. 50,000 to 100,000. And this is to have a magazine that holds 15. So, you've got a pistol that carries 15 rounds. But you only keep 10 in it. You're in violation of this law. Don't worry, the government can still carry these weapons in these magazines, okay? You are completely safe. Trust us. We are here to protect you. One day we'll do a video on the cases about how the government has an absolute duty to protect you. The police are there to have a duty to protect you because that's their motto: to serve, protect. No, they don't. So more penalties, and that's the end of the act. Alright, so let's talk here. Do I believe that this has any chance in hell at actually passing? No, I do not. Even if it were to pass through the House. Let's pretend that for a second. I have my doubts. There's too many Democrats that are in gun-loving states. It's not going to happen. But let's pretend for a second, and let's pretend it does happen. And it goes to the Senate. The Senate has to get through the filibuster, which means it requires 60 votes in order for it to pass. Because unlike the current Corona stuff and the rest of that, this has nothing to do with money. And so unless the Democrats get rid of the filibuster, which I highly doubt they will because it will hurt them in the future, there's not a chance in hell of it passing the filibuster. None. Absolutely no chance in hell. Okay. Even with it not having a chance in hell of passing, I do want to make one thing clear. If this were to pass and become law, I have no doubt Biden would sign this, or President Harrison here in 2 years. I have no doubt that they will pass it or sign it. There is not a cold chance in hell that I am going to register any weapons that I may or may not own. There's not a cold day in hell I'm going to register for a federal firearm license. Why did I get the state concealed permit? It's not required here in Wyoming. I could still carry my gun without my license. So why did I do it? I did it so I could buy a gun without going through the stupid background check. I walked in supposedly, okay, I'm not going to admit to buying any guns at this point. Supposedly, I walked into a gun store. Okay, hypothetically, somebody walks into a gun store with the firearm, with the concealed carry permit here in Wyoming, and they say, hey, I want that gun. Let me see it. Pick it up, you look at it, say, okay, well, let's come to an agreement on price. And this is at a gun shop. And he says, here's the price. And you say, okay, I'm good with that price. Or you say, how about you, will you accept this? And they'll say, no, you'll take it at the price I offered it to you. And you say, okay. And they say, here, let's fill out the paperwork. And you say, oh, okay, yep, here's my concealed carry permit. They still need you to fill out the paperwork, but they don't run it. And you don't have to wait and sit around and while they're on hold and the rest of that crap. Nope. And in theory, hypothetically, you could go into a gun shop and walk out with a legal gun in less than 10 minutes. I'm not saying I've done that. But there's no chance. So that's why I did the concealed permit. Also, with the concealed permit, I can carry in a lot of states that acknowledge Wyoming's concealed carry permit. So I can carry with it concealed while I'm traveling pretty safely. I've got to avoid stupid states like Illinois and other places while I'm traveling, which, believe me, is not a problem for me. Oh no, twist my arm, I can't go to Chicago. Okay. Okay, but no way in hell am I going to register. Okay, let's make this other thing clear here. Okay, safe. It is February 17th, 7:29 in the evening. I'm going fishing this weekend, and federal officers, I want you to know that as of this Saturday, which is February 20th, all of my firearms have been lost in the lake while I was fishing. I no longer own any firearms. These weapons do not exist in my possession anymore. There was a serious accident that I had, and I was traveling with all my weapons, and they are all gone now as of 2/20/21. Sad, it's horrible. But I do want to make sure that you federal officers know that I had a serious accident. Thank you guys. Have a great night.